Okay, so we have our back panel or our top panel here for the 5-panel saddle cap, and we have our front panel here. So after you've sewn your two top panels together, you're going to sew the front panel to the top. It's going to go right along this line here. For the interfacing fabric, and the front panel, you're gonna do them back to back, with them kind of facing outwards there. So in a case like, if you get a case like this, where the front panel is a little bit longer than the two top panels here, so if you put your edge up to it like that, you'll see that it's a bit longer there. You can either kind of massage your fabric a little bit to where it'll fit, or just have a little bit of excess on either side there. So personally, I like to have the top piece on the bottom when I do the sewing, but you can sew either or. Basically, you have your two fabrics that you're going to be sewing together, face to face. Make sure all your tips are all lined up. And this is going to be another kind of prime example of that. So you'll see here, if I move this over, there's a little bit of excess. Let's see, it'd be like that basically. They don't quite line up perfectly, so you can scoot your fabric over on this side over just a little bit to where you have an equal amount of excess on either side, or if there's enough stretch in the fabric, you can just pull on the fabric a little bit. So you line that guy up like that, line that guy up like that. I have a little bit of extra going on here just to kind of accommodate for the front panel being cut a little bit larger, and that's most likely going to be an error on my part, or it's because the fabric itself stretched a little bit while I was cutting it, or something to that effect there. So right now I'm just kind of trying to work with the fabric a little bit up here. Try and move this bit. Yeah, I'm just kind of moving this guy and making sure that these guys line up, so that when I get to that edge part there, the edges will be close to lined up. So once again, just trying to keep your 3/8 keep that 3/8 seam there. Once again, we're kind of getting to the edge here, just double checking, making sure that stuff's going to be pretty close. So if we flip this over, you'll see I left a little bit of extra space on this side there, and there's a pretty equal amount of space on that side as well. So you got this little bit there, and this little bit here. And that's, like I said, you can do that if the front fabric has been cut a little bit too big. It's basically longer than these two pieces. So once again, you kind of see that there, a little bit extra here, a little bit extra here. So after you've sewn the top to the front there, you're going to take your magnet away. You're going to split your two pieces here. Generally, I like to keep the two front pieces together, and then the one back piece can go back there. You're going to do your top stitch, make sure both sides are flat, check and make sure everything's okay down there. Generally, I top stitch the two pieces of fabric first, the bulkier side first, and then I flip around and do the top piece. And this front top stitch is probably the most important of all the top stitches, just because it's right in the front there, and it's what people are going to see the most when looking at this, when looking at the cap that you're making. Alright, so you clean those guys up, take a look at your top stitch. Looks alright. So after you've got that, like I said, the inside fabric is going to be face out like that. So after you've got these guys all done, we're going to sew the side panel on. So when you sew the side panel here, you're going to take your, these don't really matter, they're symmetrical, so it doesn't matter what side goes to what. You mark this side of your sewing machine for when you do, in case you need to sew lefty, and in this case you do. So when I sew the side panels on, I start with the front on both sides and sew along. That way, as it pulls the fabric, if you're sewing with a non-walking foot, it'll pull, even with a walking foot, it'll pull the fabric towards the back rather than towards the front. And if you have them opposite, it'll twist the cap when it's all completed. All right, so we're going to match our fabrics up, face to face, and just gonna double check this guy, make sure all these fabrics are all nice and lined up there. So like I said, on my machine, this line is 3/8, so I'm gonna set my guide up to that 3/8 line. We're gonna sew the side on here. So this is going to be an important line that you're not going to want to pull on the fabric a whole lot. Just so that you don't get any weird, and depending on the fabric, it might fray more than other fabrics. That's another reason not to pull on it. But basically you don't want to pull on the fabrics because this round edge here is supposed to be round, not kind of wavy there. So if you've done it right, both ends should match up or be pretty close to matching up. Just like that there. Both edges are pretty much matched up or pretty close. So you'll have this here, clip both your edges there. I like to do both sides before doing the top stitching on, but you can do the top stitching if you want to do it. Sew the side on and then do the top stitching. Or you can do like me and just sew both sides on and then do the top stitching after. So basically repeating what you just did. You're gonna make sure the two front fabrics are matched up as best you can, and then you're gonna put that right on the front corner there. Make sure all three of these fabrics are all nice and lined up. You're gonna set your guide here to the 3/8 mark that you did earlier. Put a couple stitches in there, situate your fabrics. So once again, this is a really easy cap to get your seam allowances off. This magnetic guide is really good at helping with keeping everything kind of in check here. And as you do the side piece, you just feed a little bit in at a time. Just kind of try and keep both of these pieces nice and straight. Once again, if your seam allowances are correct, both pieces will be together. In this case, I probably pulled on the fabric one side or the other a little bit more than the other. So probably not enough to really affect it, but do the best you can. Clip both of your strings there. Now we're going to do our top stitching on the side pieces here, because if you don't, the cap will look like this, which isn't terrible, but it's kind of like puffy a little bit, so we're going to try and flatten that out. Once again, when I do the top stitching on here, I often try and start with the bulkiest side, and the bulkiest piece of this particular hat is where the front panel meets the front and the top panels meet this side panel, because there's, you have your interface fabric, and then you also got these two pieces of folded over fabric. So that's going to be the most bulky section of this particular style of cap. So I'm just making sure that everything's nice and flat down below. Put a couple of stitches in there. Personally, I like making this cap the most. I feel like it goes the fastest. Once you get good at it, you can make them pretty quick. Alrighty. So kind of once again, going around these curves here, you really want to make sure that you're catching all the fabric underneath and making sure your fabric is staying flat. Around the curve, sometimes it's a little harder to keep the fabric to lay down, but do the best that you can. To the end here, flip your work around. Make sure that you're staying flat on the bottom. Same thing when I do this top stitch. I really try and have this the seam kind of in the middle of one of those prongs. That helps keep your spacing consistent. Or whatever your indicator may be. If you want to have the foot on the far side, you can do that, just as long as you keep it consistent throughout the sewing of the piece. Okay, I've got the top stitching done on here. Looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. It's nice and straight through there. Now we're going to do the other side. Once again, I often start with the most bulky piece. This particular pattern, it's where the front meets the side. Okay, just making sure that all these pieces are all nice and flat as I sew over them. Kind of keeping your finger in that crack there as you continue to fold it over helps sometimes. If you keep your finger like pressed on the seam there, it kind of naturally makes the fabric stay to one side or the other. Alright, just make sure your fabric's nice and flat underneath there as you continue to go along. Doing these curves, like I said, is kind of a pain sometimes. It's definitely easier to do the top stitch on some of the other styles of caps, but not everybody likes the same hat. Alright, so we've got primarily the full crown made. The only thing that's left to do here is hem this the very back there, that back curve. You can choose to do this in the beginning when you just sew the two top panels together, or you can do it at the end here. If you do it at the end, oftentimes you'll get like a little bit of extra fabric here. I like to just clip that little bit off on the two bottom pieces there. This side looks like it's pretty good, doesn't really need it. You don't have to do that, but basically you fold this over. You're going to fold that guy over there, and you're just going to sew along that curve there. Alright, and don't worry if you have these little tails here, like this little extra bit of fabric. If you do, you can clip those little guys off. Just make sure you clean up your strings. I understand if some of the fabrics are going to be a little bit crazy on the inside here, they're going to fray a little bit. It's just how the game goes sometimes. I don't have the attachments for it. I highly doubt that you do either. So that's that. So that's how you make the crown of a 5-panel style cap. If you've done it correctly, it should look something like this. All the top stitching, everything looks pretty good, with the inside fabric kind of facing you. So that's how you do a 5-panel cap.